Just to kind of talking about developmental age and versus chronological age, I thought we might ask just an opening question of like, what is something now at your age that you do that takes you back immediately to a younger emotional age?
You go first. So I have two. Think about this question. One's like really simple, and just like there have been moments where I've been riding my bike through our neighborhood. We have a very hilly neighborhood, and when you're like have that moment of going down the hill, and you just instantly feel like the joy you felt as a kid riding your bike, which is so fun.
That's a good one.
Yep. And then the other is less positive. Whenever my child, teenager-y one, responds in a way that's like disrespectful or with attitude, there is this like internal teenager inside of me that wants to reciprocate her behavior in the same way, but just a little more because I'm the grown-up, so I can fight better now. And so if I feel it though, I feel myself drop to that younger age though in the moment because, you just want to dish it back.
Dish it back.
And let her know what it really feels like.
Yes. Yep.
Mine would be Legos.
Oh, Legos.
So at least my oldest even still will get out Legos. But I just putting them together, whether it's following a plan or just putting them together to make something that I would enjoy, turning it into something. But that was big in my childhood and loved it. Still kept them all.
And so all those emotions come back.
I do. And you just feel, it's just almost like a calmness. But there's also a joy. I find myself smiling because I'm not thinking about all the other adulting things.
Exactly.
Yeah. Big deal. And yours?
Mine, probably my negative one would be like in my parenting journey, if one of my children acts like, something from the way me and my sibling, when I was younger, had a negative interaction and they're acting that out, then all of a sudden I go down to that age and I want to protect the child who's being offended against. Do you know what I mean? And then, like Caitlin said, how did you say it perfectly?
Yeah, it's like you step into this like mode of wanting to prevent the child who's the victim from like being hurt the same way you were. And so instead of like parenting both kids collectively, you are on the side of the victim against this other who's also your child. But your brain like signals danger. Yeah. And so you shift and you forget.
Your brain picked a side?
Yeah, yes, because you have those memories.
An emotionally immature side.
Yes.
Definitely. And then a positive for me is motorcycling. I just love, if I'm especially dirt biking, just being out there, getting dirty, playing in the woods. This weekend I had a little chainsaw and I was cutting little trails and I was no age at that point. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't my current age.
You weren't even a teenager. You were a teenager 8-year-old with a chainsaw.
8-year-old with a chainsaw, having a blast.
There you go. Perfect.
Welcome to Beneath the Branches, a podcast for the Adoption and Foster Care Clinic, where we sit in the shade of shared experience. The heart is normalized and belonging is built, one honest conversation at a time. Join us as we hold space for the messy, beautiful work of building connection beneath the branches.
Welcome back to Beneath the Branches. I have here today Caitlin Inman, one of our therapists, and Amy Elmore, our developmental therapist, and I'm Dr. Chambers. Today we're going to talk about developmental age versus chronological age. Parenting the child you have, not the age that you see. Because a child's age tells you how long they've been alive, but their development tells you what they've actually experienced. What skills they can do, their emotional age, their intellectual age. So how do we figure that out?
Well, first of all, we pretty much will know it's scattered. There's never one that, everything does not end up on the same level that we would typically see. Sure. Emotionally, we would go back to like to figure out their emotional age, what we look at their attention span, how they handle directions or when given a direction, choice making, and then how they handle stress. because we pretty much can see it then. Is there anything else?
Capacity, like looking at their ability to be tired and hungry and also, like listen, like kind of having a need that maybe is not being met, but still able to like follow a command. That's like a more mature skill. So we might see like a 12-year-old who really needs a snack. And because of what they've been through, they're unable to be hungry and be respectful at the same time. It also shows up with our neurodivergent kids,
Right.
Yeah, definitely. And that can bring a lot of parent frustration until you realize, okay, it's okay to parent younger. And I hear you guys saying that over and over, to parent the child that's in front of you, not the skill-wise and emotionally.
Seeing what they're doing at that moment, but helping families remember where that really is. So a 4-year-old who is very much still acting like a 1-year-old, and sometimes we'll say it's even hard to get to 2, because at least 2-year-olds can play next to another 2-year-old, but they're still going to take away that toy next to them. So they're going to constantly go, what's next, because they are usually entertained. But you take a 4-year-old or 8-year-old, and most families will think, well, they can play by themselves. But they really can't, at that age. I mean, 4-year-olds don't very often. And if they do, it's a very small amount of window of opportunity where they might do something. But they also want to be right next to you.
So I can see as if you're parenting at that 4-year-old level, your frustration is going to be less than if you're trying to make the child be their chronological age, their 8-year-old.
They're 8 or 10, yes. Mm-hmm.
Why is it that there's such a difference between developmental age and chronological age in our kids that we treat?
My simple answer is it's the way trauma impacts the brain. Like I always use the example with families that if you can imagine they're like a child's development, like a piece of glass or a mirror, and the traumatic event is a rock, and you drop it onto the glass or the mirror and it splinters. Like that is kind of what happens when a child experiences trauma during these early developmental years. And so we have kids who may have this high skill of street smarts, kids who can really fend for themselves, but they cannot cope with any sort of emotional stress, so you can see this kid who looks so just savvy, but then also when we are upset, we're too. And that's simple answer is just the way trauma impacts development.
Right, I like that.
I would agree. And I definitely think that when our kids are in stressful situations, then they're in survival mode, and that often replaces skill building mode.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So the opportunity to develop as a typical child is not even there because they're in that place of stress for long periods of time. So they're not building the skills as if they were in an environment where they felt regulated and their needs were being met.
Mm-hmm. And that's where no learning is happening.
Right.
Because they're in that constant state of fight or flight. So either we're shut down or we're ping-ponging. Kind of always think of it with a ping pong table, we're bouncing back and forth of trying to regulate, and then, oh, wait a minute, what's over here? And and so they can't pick up on any of the cues. Yeah.
I think another thing is that skills are built in layers. And so if you miss one of these bottom layers, then the skills that are built on top of that are more shaky and not firmly cemented.
Right. No foundation. Right. Yes, and so at least if we go back to where we think they are developmental age is, even if we overshoot it, if we even go younger, you're building a foundation so that you have something to go to the next level on. I would rather overshoot and go younger than hit it right where I think it's at. Builds a little window of tolerance.
And probably the most common fear to that I hear parents that I'd love for you guys to address is, but I don't want to baby them. I want them to create some self-sufficiency. So can y'all speak to that? Because that's a very valid feeling of, okay, if they're ever going to get to the skills they need for middle school, I need to treat a 10-year-old like a 10-year-old.
Sure, yeah. I always tell families kids need to learn how to be safely dependent before they can be independent. And oftentimes our kiddos have not had the opportunity to be safely dependent on their caregivers. And so just like with skills, same with like emotions and attachment, we start at the bottom. You have to have a firm, secure foundation to develop strong emotional independence. And so we will get there, but we have to start at the bottom first and build that foundation so they can get to a place of healthy independence. Because we'll see kids that come in sometimes that are strongly independent, but they refuse all help from adults because they don't feel safe. So we'll even tell parents, like, don't lean into this independent side. Do it for them in the beginning. Like, really lean into teaching them how to depend on you. Because you can't go back and redo it after so much time, you know, like that's so.
And like I will tell them sometimes, even like when we're doing playtime, and they'll say, "Oh, you know, get your shoes," and I'll go, "Oh, mommy can help put those on." You know, like almost just to cue them to not think independence, but to actually do the next thing. Or I can say, "Oh, you need to go to the restroom. You need to go to the restroom. Oh, Mama will take you." You know, and I just encourage those are my little tidbits of sort of like making it happen when it can, and then teaching them how to play. You know, the hardest part is play is just similar to what you do. And then sometimes when we look at it, they're really dependent upon the other person coming up with the task. Right. But you also can let the child come up with the task and then you just play along. Because then that builds imitation, which then begins to take them to the next level developmentally, chronologically. And then but play's the hardest thing. I would say, 50-50, either as a parent, you can pull it off, or maybe in the other half can't, because you've never really felt that even in your own life.
Yeah, it's difficult. And I always tell parents too, like, there's a certain level of trust and vulnerability that comes into play with play. You know, like the child is showing up and expecting you to engage with them and to share joy, which is a vulnerable experience, especially for a kid who hasn't had a parent do that with them. Right. So it feels hard. It feels like pointless. Like, what is this accomplishing? But you are, again, like low level, very small risk, building a foundation of trust and safety. And at the same time, teaching these skills that help with confidence and higher level thought on down the road.
I hear, like, as you guys are talking, so much of that skill building is built on alongside attachment building.
Right.
Yeah. Again, because we're like that connection of like, when I don't feel safe and I'm in fight, flight, or freeze, I cannot appropriately grow and develop. You know, so we're accomplishing both at the same time with our kids. And oftentimes I'll be doing TheraPlay at the same time Amy is doing OT. You know, like we kind of work hand in hand to do both of those things with our kiddos.
Because everything that, if I'm doing and teaching a new skill, that's learning. So every time as a therapist, whether you're a physical therapist, speech therapist, occupational therapist, vision impaired therapist, and you can't teach any of these skills unless you have a foundation to build on. And so a lot of times our play and motor planning is more about the play, and the motor planning kind of happens by accident, and then you kind of figure out what to do next. So, yeah. You can't learn if you're not safe. And they're not going to be willing to take an instruction. They may be willing to take an instruction from me, but not the parent. So then how can you have the carryover into everyday life if the parent can't provide an instruction?
If the attachment piece isn't there and the trust.
And I don't know of a case where a parent has taken a child and treated them so emotionally younger that it's detrimental. I'm trying to think of cases like that, you know, and it would be I'm sure there are some that exist, but it's rare, because what happens when you take a child back to a much younger age, as you're parenting them on a much younger age, it doesn't last very long. Like you're not stuck there at a 3-year-old level. It doesn't take you a whole year to get to a 4-year-old level. It may just take a couple of weeks or a couple of months that you're doing imaginative kitchen play, you know, with your 12-year-old. Yeah, it's going to go fast, but you're still giving those foundational skills as you go.
I cannot think of a time in 24 years of doing this where there has ever been a detriment to that moment of going all the way back. Now, a child may say back to you, "I'm not a baby." But then you just change maybe then the way you handle the situation is, is what to say next. But then you can go, oh, well, what would you like to play next? Like if maybe you overshot and went too young, but then you follow their cue. I mean, you're just looking. But I mean, to me, that's something that's so important is how to teach that to another family member, because we do it innately. But how to teach that to someone else is very difficult. I mean,
I think the only time it ever creates an issue, and Amy, I bet you'll agree with me because I feel like we talk about this a lot, is when parents confuse parenting younger with accommodation. And so we are no longer holding structure.
Right.
Because we like move into this almost like I'm creating this super safe, comfortable world for this kiddo so they can build trust and safety, and I'm treating them like they're several years younger, but then we lose sight of structure.
Right.
And then at some point along the way, if we don't shift and start to like really hold that structure appropriately for their age, because even small children, toddlers need really direct structure. But I feel like parents get that part confused.
Toddlers see it as control, because then the parent says, well, now they have control of the situation. Like, you come sit next to me. Well, there's not really room for you, but can I sit over here? And there's a very thin line of whether or not how to, because structure and control are different.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And you'll see, I think, with our older kids that we're parenting younger who do need that like direct physical structure, where you'll be like, to your 10-year-old, come sit here. So I need that because emotionally I'm 5, but verbally I'm gonna be like, nah, dude, don't want to do that. And so parents are like, what? So it's having to tease out, how do I hold the structure, meet the younger emotional age, and not let that take control, not hand over all my control to the 10-year-old. There's such a hard balance there. And it gets really tricky, I think.
And that's where the toddler's going to pick what they eat. They're going to go pick out their snacks. They're going to choose not to sit with you at a mealtime. They're not going to choose to let you feed them.
Right.
And so they start going with it's almost they're on their time and their schedule rather than, no, it's time to eat.
Right.
We will first eat and then we're going to play.
Right.
What are we going to, and then while you're eating, what do you want to play with afterwards?
Yes.
Do you want the kitchen set? Do you want your car? Do you want to go outside? Go outside. Don't give too many choices.
Right.
But give 2 choices. But helping them make that transition in a playful way rather than, I told you to come to the table.
Right.
Very thin line.
So the key there I'm hearing is holding structure is not the same as you can treat them younger, but you still have to hold structure.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because I think that's where it gets slippery, because then like all this hyper accommodation creates more anxiety in our kiddos because they have too much control. Parents are too accommodating. So, yeah.
Yeah, that would be the biggest takeaway, I think, from even our talk today would be remembering structure aspect of it. It doesn't mean holding black and white. It just means there are times for this and there are times for this.
Yes, I always tell parents, like, you're holding the structure, but you're looking ways to share the power. That's how you create safety, by holding the structure, and trust by sharing the power.
A lot of our families say they're getting backlash from family members and friends of treating their child like a baby.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm always like, listen, these kids didn't have a typical upbringing. They missed these experiences, that let them have their judgment, but like, this is what this child needs, like they didn't have a caregiver to wake up in the middle of the night and attune to their stress cries, so you've got to walk back through some of these steps with them so they can get there, but they need this with you. So like, who cares? Who cares if they're judging you, like they're like, this kid needs it and they will be better off in the future. You're parenting them for the future, and this is what they need now.
And I don't know if we've done it in a while, but we used to even write letters for families to give to their extended family, and give them some tools that they needed to sort of say, this was our idea and this is why. Just using it as an educational moment so that the other family members can understand it is a opposite parenting, very opposite of what typically other people are doing in our world, especially right now. So.
And I think one word that you used, Caitlin, or phrase is around parental access. right? Says when you're an infant, you have complete and total parental access. You always have access to your parent during the daytime and at night. And then, as a teen, you don't necessarily need that much access. You need access, but it's not 24/7. And so that's one area where we definitely parent a child younger, is giving them the opportunity they may have never had to have that parental access more around the clock, depending on the age of the child, depending on the situation. But that is one thing that we are constantly talking to families about. What does parental access look like based on the emotional age of your child, not the chronological age of your child?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Which means the parent has to be a lot more accessible than they were expecting in this situation. I mean, to me, I think that sometimes even those are my things. I think that whether or not I could do that, and then encouraging another family and parent to be able to do something that I know that would even be hard to do. But I think that's just like you holding them and helping them know when to be attuned, and then also knowing how to take care of themselves. And that comes into play too, because you're on a lot more than you thought you were going to be. Your parenting button has been turned on, power on.
And I think families wonder, like, gosh, how long is this going to last? Because this is a lot. But there are ways to catch children up to their chronological age, because development doesn't stay stuck. It does grow when it's supported correctly. I think of scaffolding skills, like you start with this skill and then you can scaffold another skill onto another skill. What are other ways that you can build skills, whether it's the emotional skills, whether it's executive functioning, behavior regulation, developmental delays? What are other ways we can build skills so that we can get a child closer to their developmental age?
I love if a child can handle it, asking questions like, say, what do we need? Like to start an activity. Well, what are we missing? Scissors. We're making a craft, or what do we need? Well, do we need the Play-Doh first, or do we need the pipe cleaners? Which one, what do we need? Having that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of times, I guess, too, you could just use an occupational therapist, like you do this all the time, of teaching families how to catch up those skills. Like, okay, these are the areas that I see they're behind in. First, you're evaluating them. Where are the skills levels at? And then giving them ideas of how to catch them up effectively.
And a lot of what I do is so much through the play aspect. I mean, a lot of occupational therapists, that's what we learned in school, a lot of. But a lot of what we do outside of it, like in the normal outpatient environment, I'm giving these like, now we're going to do this, and now we're going to do this. Where through what I do here, it's very much meeting them where they are and going, like for instance, like a child who may want to play soccer, or a family's like looking at them playing on doing a soccer 4 and 5 year old soccer team, but have a hard time one leg standing balance. Well, then how are we going to work at home on that? Well, like I love like kicking bubbles, like blowing bubbles and kicking the bubbles so that they pop. Well, now they're working on that. Or, being able to make your own obstacle course at home, walking on the curb, jumping off the curb. But having those engaging times where you're working on an actual motor developmental skill to get them to learn that they can do it. And I think that's another part of all of this, is that our kids are sometimes very in tune to what they cannot do well. And if they know that already and they see other kids doing it, because also we're talking about a 5-year-old who might be acting more like a 2-year-old, but their 5-year-old sense knows what that other child is doing. But their brain emotionally is going, I can't do it, like a 2-year-old, or pitching a fit and rolling around on the ground. So now we've got to go, okay, how do I emotionally meet them where they are to teach them how to do something they want to be able to do? And it's difficult.
And I think things that I would say are not good to do to help a child catch up is pointing that out. Like, you're too old to do this, or you need to act your age, or comparing them to a sibling. So-and-so can do this. You should be able to do it too. I mean, I think those are obvious things, but I just wanted to state them.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, for sure.
And for the parent, then you have to remind yourself, if you've got somebody similar to that age in your home currently, then you'll start doing it. And just reminding yourself, oh yeah, I did it again. But if you're attuned to it, at least that's a start, a step in the right direction, is knowing that you may already be doing that and reminding yourself not to.
Yeah. Well, this is helpful. And we're happy to help with anybody who's trying to figure out their child's actual developmental age. We can do that either in person or we can even do it virtually as well. So, well, thank you guys a lot for joining us here on Beneath the Branches.
Thank you for joining us at the Adoption and Foster Care Clinic for another episode of Beneath the Branches, a podcast for adoptive, foster, and kinship care families. We are deeply grateful to our sponsor, Show Hope, for their generous support and their continued work to break down barriers to adoption and support families every step of the way. Until next time, may you feel covered, connected, and never alone beneath the branches.